Welcome to Take It Up with Jessica Lee. My guest today is Kavitha Mariappan, who is the SVP of Customer Experience and Transformation at Zscaler. Kavitha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to bring you on because we are celebrating women. It's Women's History Month, and you have this fantastic journey of going from engineering to becoming a business leader, owning P&L, and making a huge impact along the way. If you could share your journey a little bit and tell us your new role here and what you do in this industry.
I'd be happy to. So I, started without dating myself, over 2 decades ago. I grew up in Australia, and I really started in engineering, and always been extremely interested and fascinated by math and science. Right, okay. This was my thing, and studied engineering. And when I graduated in Australia, very much earlier on in my career, started off in a very customer-centric engineering role. Mm-hmm. So I was a systems engineer in the field, supporting the customer and the sales organization. Okay. So moved from development to systems engineering very earlier on, and that was probably where I cut my teeth in terms of really starting to have a customer-centric view on why we built technology and products. Mm-hmm. Technology unto itself is fascinating, but technology with a purpose, it really fulfills a need, right? Yes. And living in the field, working with customers, and really from a day-to-day understanding kind of their pain points and the needs, and how an organization needs to continue to kind of understand that, right? Reach and understand that, and continue to kind of build the right products and services for those customer needs. It really sort of formed my thinking, my ability to question and formulate, and also provide feedback recursively. And from that, I sort of transitioned, and I moved to the United States. I transitioned into a product management role, and that again was another pivot moment, another way to learn.
And you were at Cisco at this point.
I was at Cisco at that time, and I spent over a decade there. It was a fantastic school, I would say, for product managers to learn how to define product, how to define market requirements, how to understand customer needs, how to enable the field to be able to sell it, how do we reconcile that with what you already have in your product portfolio, how do you learn how to continue to grow that business, supply chain management, budgeting, pricing, financial management, the whole gamut of building a business.
And that's the P&L responsibility.
That was my P&L responsibility. So over a decade there, and obviously, grew into becoming a people manager and managed a fairly sizable team over time. And so as you can see, my career sort of transitioned from, development to support to defining and building products. Right. And then the natural transition was to be able to pull it all together and tell that story. And that's when I made that shift into marketing as a product marketer when I left to go work at Riverbed. Okay. And it was in the early days of I would say, cloud, cloud computing and enterprise cloud computing technology solutions being built. And it was Riverbed's first cloud business unit, and once again, it was a pivotal moment, right? Learning how to disrupt incumbent technologies by as we innovating in the cloud, and yet keeping the customer in mind. Here, the customer has legacy technology deployed. How do you continue to help the customer innovate while understanding their pain points? And how do you tell that story? How do you bring it all together? How do you build a brand? How do you go to market? And from then on, I got the startup bug, and I decided this was the time for me to go spread my wings and go do something from scratch, right? Take something from a early concept product to market. And I guess I'd be very fortunate. I've had the good fortune of actually working on some fascinating technologies with some fascinating teams and founders, and to see a lot of that come to fruition. So actually was responsible for taking 3 startups to market from ground up.
So that's why you are an advisor, an executive advisor at Y
Combinator. So I do a lot of go-to-market advising, and that whole startup experience was, I would say, it was a very telling experience. When you're in an early stage startup to, I would say, growth stage, there are not a lot of training wheels. There's not a lot of infrastructure or support behind you. You really have to believe in the technology. You have to build the right team. You have to have the right intellectual property, bring the right resources on board, and you really have to have the skills to build, the systems, the processes, the infrastructure, the brand from ground up. I learned a lot, not just about how to do business, how to build a brand, how to build product, how to build a go-to-market engine, but I learned a lot more about myself and the skills I have and the skills I don't have and where I needed to sharpen, the saw, right? And that learning never stops. And I think the one thing, if I was to do a look back analysis on my whole career, the learning never stops. And what I think excites me the most is working on really interesting technologies that are impacting business positively in the right way. And how am I learning? How is my team learning? How are we challenging ourselves to do things better, differently, and at the same time creating impact?
Talk about your current role then. What is customer experience and transformation here?
Yeah, so I have a really interesting, fascinating role. I'm very excited about it. So I am responsible for driving global, leading global strategic initiatives that drive a customer-centric experience throughout the company. And that includes innovation. That includes evangelism and also high impact programs. So at the end of the day, for companies to continue to leapfrog, to innovate, to stay ahead of the game, right, have to think outside the box. You have to start to think about beyond day-to-day operational activities. Those operational activities are absolutely critical to the success of the company, but we have to do more.
Can you give an example of one of the initiatives or
new programs, new ways to delight our customers, right? New ways for our customers to interact with our products, processes, and things like that. So my mandate really is to position Zscaler as a transformation agent in the industry, and to execute on that. Sort of, there's two vectors or approach, right? One being, how do we take a customer-centric view in terms of everything our customers experience with us? How do we continue to enhance and sort of delight that experience from their early engagement with us all the way through the life cycle of their partnership with us? How do we do things better? How do we improve on things? How do we, I say innovate, right? How do we give them new products, new features? Think differently. Don't just think like incrementally. And the other side of it, the other vector is, how do we as a company continue to adapt and evolve, right? So we can enable that. So that is essentially my role. So it cross-cuts across multiple cross-functional units. It is very technical, and it's also very go-to-market centric, and it's also very external and internally focused.
Sounds really fun, but there are challenges in this role because you actually have to influence different stakeholders and not necessarily have direct authority, but more of an influence.
In some cases, yes. And I think, what is interesting about this role, many companies have a role around transformation. Our lens to everything we do is customer first, right? The customer obsession, the customer experience. So by taking that lens and that priority as an organization, it drives the priority, it drives the thinking, it drives the mandate top down from our CEO across the executive team through our entire company. And that's kind of what we use as our North Star in our day-to-day.
Let's talk about your success. Let's celebrate some of the achievement. What are you most proud of in your career journey so far? It's a very humbling question, right? For me, I think what I'm really proud at is the fact that I have been able to build and work with some amazing teams, right? And I think maybe part of this comes from me being a woman. My teams are my family, and I have been so fortunate to have, sort of gone on these expeditions where
yes, we've built businesses. Yes, we've generated millions of dollars worth of revenue. Yes, we've built brands. We've built gone from 30 people in a company to several hundred people, where we've had conferences where we've had 5,000 people show up to listen to us. These are all achievements, but for me, what I'm really proud of is the people I've had the opportunity to work with, and I mean that sincerely, because bringing together the right teams and the right talent has really enabled me to get where I am, and to be able to sit here and sort of have that conversation with you, right, with the broader audience, it's very humbling.
Do you have mentors, and do you mentor others?
Yes. Yes to both. Mentoring, I think, can be very organic and inorganic. In most cases, I've been very fortunate that I've had mentors. In most cases, I've gone out to seek them. I have to say, in tech, in the 20 plus years, there have been very few women, especially where I grew up, and when I came into the industry, there were very few women in middle management to senior leadership positions that I could really lean on as mentors, or could aspire to become like. However, I was very fortunate to have male mentors who have really helped me. And I think that picture is really changing, right? There are more and more women in middle management and upper management in the C-suite. And yes, and to that end, I do mentor. I make that a very significant part of my giving back, because I do believe, and that's not restricted to women. I mentor men and women, at all levels, because I do believe that is corporate social responsibility that we all have, and for those of us who've gotten where we are, and we still have a long way to go, that we need to do that.
And what other areas that you think we still need to work on?
So I think if you look at women in tech, right, women in the industry, there are several sort of inflection points. I would say one being just the top of the funnel, the number of female students entering sort of STEM courses. I definitely think that picture is changing. When I went into engineering, these were core disciplines. You studied in civil engineering, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, etc. Those have all changed. Today you have domain scientists that are intersecting with data scientists. You have creative designers working with UX front end designers. The world is becoming it's cross-pollinating. These disciplines are cross-pollinating. So I think we're definitely starting to solve the top of the funnel problem. More and more women in STEM, but we have to encourage that. I think and not just in sort of B2C companies. I think you see women in tech. Many of them are in more of the B2C companies rather than the core sort of core technology domains or companies. So we need to make all facets of technology more exciting to women, right? And young women entering the workforce. And then I think you see the middle of that, that funnel where life happens.
Yes.
And so you see that definite attrition of women from the workforce as you start to think about work-life balance. People have families. People don't see the path ahead. There's lack of sort of corporate sponsored programs to help encourage them when life happens. Yes. So I think there's a lot more companies and organizations can do to make that transition happen seamlessly for female and male employees. And in many cases, as much as female employees are facing motherhood, there are male employees are also facing challenges with fatherhood and childcare and having to be home at a certain time, see kids.
Work flexibility.
Yeah, work flexibility, higher education. How do you juggle all those things, right?
And also the program to help women get back into the workforce after taking some time.
Right, re-entry.
Or men taking some time.
Right, and how do you reskill to catch back up? And then I think the third thing is how do we help more women kind of continue to smash that glass ceiling, right? though that becomes yet another inflection point, a different set of skills, a different network. And it takes work. How are we helping women get into more boards, get into, get visibility into more C-level and executive level positions? I mean, what's really interesting about the network effect is that people tend to refer people and network with people that are like themselves.
Yes.
By virtue of the fact that there are more men in more powerful positions, more of these referrals are always going to be of the like sort, right? So how do we encourage that? Not just women referring other women, but men
referring
women.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate. I mean, a lot of these moves, I've been moving to the United States with my job. It was somebody I worked for who became a mentor, who saw an opportunity to throw and help me throw my hat in the ring, right? So there are people out there that will do it
Male
for
allies.
you. Yeah, and find them, align with them, build a plan, advocate for yourself.
Yes, and I think more and more companies are now making like a corporate commitment to having that diversity and inclusion, meaning like there's a corporate metric that they want to achieve.
Right.
So consciously making sure that people are going through that training to review their unconscious bias, and then making an effort to bring in more qualified female candidates for positions all the way up to the board level.
No, I think there's also a danger when it's an interesting debate. There's always a danger when we place a lot of emphasis on unconscious bias, because now the unconscious bias becomes a conscious bias and we over-rotate as well, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, we want to hire competent people. You want the best player on your team, whether that player is a male or a female. But how are we more mindful of just broadening kind of what that sample size is of the people that we would consider, and apply sort of different parameters to how we evaluate them. And I think that just diversity in thinking and in an approach will help move the needle somewhat.
Who inspires you? What inspires you?
Okay. For me, what inspires me is the thrill of the chase. That's what excites me, right? I love building new things, and I love seeing it come to life. So two people I think, in the industry that inspire me, I would say one, Indra Nooyi. She was until recently the CEO and president of PepsiCo. She's actually on the board of Amazon. To me, she's one of these female leaders who she embodies strength. Strength in a very pragmatic way. She's an extremely competent, strong female leader, but very transparent in terms of managing the challenges of life with the challenges of a career. One was, I chuckle about this all the time when I hear the day she was promoted to become, she was already the CEO, but the day she was promoted to become the president of Pepsi, she drove home and she was excited to tell her family this story. And her mother said to her at the garage, "We'll wait to hear your story. We need milk in the house." And at that moment, right, you realize life happens. You might be president and CEO, but you are a mother to someone, a daughter to someone, a sister to someone, a partner to someone. And, it's that reality in which she sort of charted those waters. To me, it inspires me. The other person I would say would be Elon Musk, right? Okay. To me, despite the scandal, this man is not afraid to break glass. This man is not afraid to think differently and challenge the status quo, right? To sort of believe that the impossible is always possible as long as you want it.
Yes.
And so those would be, to me, kind of like two people that inspire me.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you share your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
To celebrate success in life and everything as a woman in tech. Appreciate you being on here, and love to hear you come back and tell us more stories, because I know you've been with Zscaler for 6 months now, so there's a lot of exciting initiatives you're doing, so
absolutely,
you gotta come back and tell us more.
Would love to. Thank you for having me.
Sure, you're very welcome. Thanks for watching. Take it up with Jessica Lee.